A year ago, shortly after Russia invaded Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky said that without negotiations there could be no end of the war. Do you still see a negotiated settlement between Ukraine and Russia as the only practical way forward?
I believe that we have a very clear conditions for any negotiations, and we made it clear not only to Russians but also to our international partners. So in the basis of this peaceful negotiation should be the respect of sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. And that means that all occupied territories should be liberated by the Russian Federation. So the people who committed atrocities should be facing responsibility. Russia should also repay what she ruined. I mean, in my country, it should be like through the special tribunal also for those who were guilty. And then, if they are ready to go back to the borders of 1991 and completely respect the territorial integrity of Ukraine, so I think that can be a basis of negotiations. However, Russia is always playing with the narrative that they favor peaceful negotiations. But the very same day as they, for example, suggest peace negotiations to Ukraine, and the same day they're using missiles against our population. So that's why I don't have any reason to believe them.
Last September, Ukraine has applied for NATO membership. How do you assess the real perspectives on Ukraine joining NATO?
No, the position now in general is that everybody actually in NATO supports Ukraine membership. Where the contradictions start is about the timing. So the position of many allies is that first Ukraine should focus, and also the alliance should focus on military support to Ukraine to win. And then after war, we can start discussing the perspectives of political dialogue, starting accession talks and whatever. We believe, and also we have countries who are supporting us in NATO, we believe that two processes can go in parallel. So we will be providing again and doing our reforms, making really compatibility and interoperability with the alliance, and then we can also discuss possible accession. So nobody hinders us even to discuss it, even without definite result at the moment. So again, not consensus yet about the timing, but in general, everybody in the alliance support our future membership, and also the Secretary General made clear it on several occasions that Ukraine will become NATO member state.
Will Ukraine be able to integrate air defense systems, armored vehicles and tanks received from Western allies into its national defense in a short enough time to make them relevant to the war with Russia?
We are already doing that. However, I will not, hide from you that it's a very difficult and challenging process. So the idea is that we should do it anyway, because look at the situation now. When the war started, the logic of our partners was that Ukraine should be provided with Soviet-style weapon and weaponry. And that was very natural decision, because we know how to handle this equipment. We have spare parts, we can service it, repair and so on. But with time, as the war was going on, the problem is that we don't have any more spare parts anymore. For example, we have tanks of Soviet style, but we don't have ammunition for them. So they become useless at some point. And the stocks were depleting eventually. And now we are facing very, very simple, so to say, reality. We have no other choice but to switch to Western standard weapon. Because otherwise, as I mentioned, there would be deficit on everything. And in the long run, I believe then the war would be over. I think also for NATO and Ukraine that would be a very good sign for our armed forces, because we will be really compatible at the battlefield.
The Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, recently sounded the alarm about a shortage of ammunition and the fact that the war is depleting the stocks of allied countries. Is there a risk of Ukrainian troops running out of ammunition on the front line?
I recognize the problem, and it was discussed also with the Secretary General. It was discussed with our allies at Ramstein meeting, and it was also raised by Minister Kuleba when he met Jens Stoltenberg and Joseph Borrell in Brussels, in the beginning of this week. What is the best way out? The best way out is, of course, to increase and speed up the volumes of production. There is no other way. And for that, we believe it should be joint procurement used. It should be more simplified procedures, for example, if we are talking about export control. And of course, joint production. Because, for example, during Ramstein, the Minister of Defense of France announced that together with Australia, they would be producing ammunition 155 for Ukraine. And I think this is a very good example of how people and countries, even from the different parts of the world, because Australia is not definitely in NATO, but they can work together to help Ukraine with the ammunition. So crucial is to have both political will, politicians, but to be in close contact with companies who are producing weapon and weaponry.
Some countries have put forward the idea of setting up joint ventures under license to produce arms in Ukraine itself, which also has a tradition in this area, thus saving money and time on transport. How do you assess this possibility?
Of course, we are interested, to have on our territory the centers and joint companies, joint ventures of producing ammunition, spare parts, for example, even servicing some equipment. But here we have one very obvious problem now. It's constant air missiles attacks. So, in order to secure production or servicing or whatever, we are using now more the possibilities of the neighboring countries. But in perspective, I think it would be very good to have joint ventures on our territory. For example, the Turkish company Bayraktar already announced that they would be establishing a factory on Ukrainian territory. But again, we will be facing with, very, very serious safety concerns.
How was your cooperation with the Romanian delegations here at NATO in this year since the war began in your country in February last year?
No, I can only be very complimentary about your mission here and in person about my friend Ambassador Dan, because they are really our friends. And during this year there were many things when we were consulting each other, and the delegation was trying to help as much as they could. And even today, this exhibition that we opened together, that was the original idea of Romanian ambassador and Polish ambassador. And all together, three of us, we decided that it would be a very good opportunity also to do something in the headquarters, to remind people about this sad anniversary.
A number of Ukrainian officials have been fined or targeted by disciplinary sanctions in the scandal of the overpriced food products for the troops. Top officials in the Ministry of Defense have been dismissed, and it has been rumored that the Oleksiy Reznikov himself will be removed. Are all these steps a sign that corruption surrounding the military is under control, or would you rather say that you are just beginning to uncover the depth of the problem?
I will explain the situation like this. So when the problem itself was revealed also by some investigation of the journalist, no, it was not, so to say, something which came as a big surprise. Because usually, when there is a big ministry and when for example, for the sake actually of safety and security, we closed some public procurement. So some people, unfortunately, try to misuse the opportunities they have. I think what is the most important in this situation is not the crime itself, but how the leadership of Ukraine and, personally, President and then Oleksiy Reznikov reacted to what happened. So they made clear that this, war profiteers, as we call them, they will be severely punished, in the Ukrainian system. But this is one part, this is personal responsibility. But another thing, and I really believe that this is the way out, is to make this system under, real public and civil control. So to put again back that all the procurement should be based on a very fair process. It should be made public. What is the contract? What are the volumes? Of course, keeping something very essential for our armed forces, it should be kept under certain secret. But in general, it would be a really fair system, public and competitive, like open for all competitors. And I think that actually our Minister of Defense is the right person to proceed with these reforms.
The American President Joe Biden made this Monday a surprise visit to Ukraine, highlighted by your country and its allies as a strong support signal in a very difficult time. President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke of important and crucial negotiations that are bringing the victory closer. Which is the next step of American military support that you expect in this critical moment of the war?
You are right. The visit of President Biden was a very important event for us. And this is also very symbolic, not only in terms because he announced another package of military help to Ukraine, but also in terms of that after 1 year he is standing on the Ukrainian land together with Ukrainians and with our president, showing that this is the commitment of all actually American society to support Ukraine. And I think that this is also a very good message for NATO, because NATO member state president is standing on the Ukrainian land. What we expect and what we need is of course air defense. This is very crucial. Like our Ukrainian military already started trainings on Patriots. Of course, it will require some time to complete the trainings, then to do the supply itself, but the air defense should be there. We are also counting on a long-range artillery, because now we are quite limited in our capacity, but in order to have at some point a counter-offensive and to liberate the temporarily occupied territory in Ukraine, we need the long-range artillery. And it's not also a taboo, I think, anymore. We start discussing also about the aircraft's delivery, not only from the United States, but we are discussing it with other NATO member states. Now, I mean, there is no yes on their side, but the good thing is there is no. And maybe as with tanks, actually, I do remember last year tanks were a complete taboo to discuss. And now we are getting from, so to say, tanks from the tank coalition, and many countries who have Leopards, for example, they already promised to deliver them to Ukraine.